Hi, we are Joel and Lauren Lowry, and this is our podcast, Wholehearted with the Lowrys. Our passion is to see people step into their destiny through discovering how good God really is and what it looks like to live in His love and purpose. We invite you to join us as we talk about life and leadership and how to live a wholehearted life. Right, welcome back to Wholehearted with the Lowrys. We are just loving diving into this material and are just so excited to just share more with all of you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. So today we are going to be talking about what we call the three selves. But before we dive into that, I think for us, this has been one of the biggest realizations for our
huge
for our marriage. Yeah. It's just to kind of paint a picture of what it looked like early on in marriage with us. We have never really fought a lot, like
not too many times.
Not like angry, mad, get in the car and, or we don't talk for days or any of that kind of stuff, but just typical disagreements and not seeing eye to eye on everything. But early on in marriage, there would be often a breakdown in communication, and I would have a need that I would want met. Maybe it was my need for respect or attention or
probably affection. She needed lots of affection.
No, I don't. I don't need a lot of affection. But maybe in that moment I did need affection. But I, like what we said last week, in last episode, just the different needs that we have. So I would have a need and would feel bad that I had the need. Like, I shouldn't need attention. Like, I should be okay, or I shouldn't need acceptance, or I shouldn't need affection, or I shouldn't need comfort. Like, I should just be able to handle this on my own. And I would feel bad that I had the need and I didn't want to communicate it to him. But then I would feel isolated and disconnected because I had this need that I was carrying myself and I couldn't communicate it to my husband. Or I would communicate something and we were always working on my problems. I felt like, Joel, like I would often have lots of needs and felt bad I had needs. And so we always had to work on my needs. And then I didn't know how to love him. Like,
because I had no needs.
Because he had no needs. Like,
I lived under the illusion, and I think it's probably more common with men, and it's definitely something pervasive in Christian culture, that to be mature or spiritually mature is that you don't need anything from anybody, that you've got it all together and that you're a self-made person. And why would I need anything? And so I lived out that way, and it was toxic for my relationships because really what that's called is pride. It's not the loud, necessarily arrogant pride, but it's pride nonetheless. It's pride that's subtle and that is really kind of destructive.
Mm-hmm. And for people who live with people like that, it's very isolating. You feel really alone because it's like I'm living with this person and sleeping next to this person and doing life with this person, but I don't really know this person, and they won't let me into the innermost parts. And honestly, I felt like I know that you are not perfect, but why is there never anything wrong with you? Like, why don't we ever fix anything on you? Because I know you're not perfect, but you won't even let me know the things that you're struggling with.
And the truth is, I wouldn't even let me know the things that I was struggling with. Like, I just would like kind of tough it up and not really deal with stuff. And so what I found actually is that life was piling up on me, and I was avoiding it. I was in a lot of ways sticking my head in the sand and not dealing with the hurt and disappointment and pain and just those things that I had experienced. I had stuffed them. And so eventually I would have to pay the price of all of that stuff that I had been carrying around and not dealt with. I had to unpack my bags, and it was challenging. It was difficult. It was actually difficult in our relationship, not in a bad way difficult, but I began to have to process all of this stuff And for her, the knight in shining armor finally had some tarnish on the armor and some difficulty, and so that began to kind of reshape our dynamics as I began really to get healthy. And I think people in self-reliance don't. It's hard to see that they're unhealthy, at least from a little ways away, because it seems like they've got everything together. They're doing what they need to do. Everything seems to be functional, and while it's functional, it's actually dead. And that's really, in a lot of ways, where I was on the inside, is that I was isolated and alone, and I didn't even necessarily know myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So Joel lived his life at a very level bandwidth,
Very narrow bandwidth.
very narrow bandwidth. And
Not a lot of joy, not a lot of pain, and so yeah. The reality is, the way that God's created us, it's genius, is that we'll only experience joy to the extent that we're willing to experience process pain. And so some people have high levels of joy, but it's because they've done the work to dig in on the pain. And then some people, where I was like, not a whole lot of pain that I processed, but I wasn't experiencing a whole lot of joy either. Life seemed pretty steady, which wasn't bad in a lot of things, but I wasn't experiencing the joy of the Lord that would provide life to me and to the people around me. And it's got the brilliance of God's design is that when we experience trauma, what happens is our bandwidth shrinks so that we don't experience more trauma, because an open bandwidth, you're going to just get like pulverized. And so it like puts it on pause so that we can get into a place of safety, experience the pain, and then it opens back up, and it keeps us from living out of really like a false joy with a bunch of stuffed pain. And so it's God's design for our health. But what happens is that when we stuff it, when we don't experience process pain, let God into it, let Him heal it, then what happens to us is that we get stuck and we don't have a whole lot of joy. And for me, that looked like depression, and really kind of putting all the problems off or even onto Lauren, making it seem like she had the problems.
yeah. Yeah. So like what we said, we went on that marriage retreat back in 2009. And I think that was the first time we were exposed to the three selves.
Yep.
And so the three selves are selfishness, self-reliance, and self-condemnation. And like what we said in the last episode, that sin is getting a legitimate need met illegitimately. And so we all have needs. And it's like a baby. Like a baby has needs, and that baby is going to get its needs met one way or another, by screaming or crying or whining or whatever. And I think us as adults, we actually don't really grow past that baby likeness. We just get more creative and
healthy or unhealthy,
a little bit more intelligent in how we get our needs met. And so the reality is that we all have needs, and we will get them met one way or another.
Yeah.
The question is, are we going to get them met in a healthy way or an unhealthy way?
Yeah, in a way that builds relationship and trust and caring and connection and all of those things.
And leads us into the way that we were created to live.
Yep. Or are we going to just be toxic, really? And a lot of times for most people, it's subtly toxic. It's not like catastrophic for relationships, but it erodes trust and life and love and connection over a long period of time. And it's, I think, a lot of ways where people are married for several years and they begin to drift apart. It's because they just don't know how to communicate their needs and healthily get their needs met. So the three selves are selfishness, self-reliance, and self-condemnation. And selfishness is this: it's that I recognizing I do have needs and I'll take to get my needs met. And so no matter what, I'm going to get my needs met, and I'll do whatever I need to do. I will take maybe by control or force, or even by manipulation and withdrawal, but I'm going to get my needs met because I don't trust that anybody else will. And so the antidote, the key to dealing with selfishness in your life, and we probably all have a little bit of selfishness in there, is trust. And it starts this way. It's that I would trust God and others to get there with the needs in the same way that they trust me. And so it's creating this free-flowing way of meeting needs and living in relationship. And so I'm trusting you, and ultimately I'm trusting God. So Lauren's not the one that meets my needs. It's not on her to take care of my needs. It's not even her responsibility. I actually trust God, and He loves to love us, and He loves to love us through other people. And so when we begin to trust and communicate appropriate to the relationship, then we end up living in a healthier way.
Yeah, and how we do that with our kids, because if you've ever experienced selfishness to the utmost, it's usually with kids, like, because they haven't quite figured out how to get their needs met in a healthy way, and there's just a lot of needs whenever you're a kid.
Yep.
And so the way that we work on it with our kids is helping them recognize just the need that they're trying to get met. And, maybe it's our 3-year-old that wants to be included in the play that his sisters are doing. and we help him recognize. We say, oh, you want to be included in this group, don't you? And typically he'll say yes. And so, but you're being really selfish right now by hitting them and demanding that they include you.
Tearing down what they're playing
with, or, being obnoxious. If you want them to include you, then you need to tell them, I want to play too. And just helping give our kids the language for that, because oftentimes if we act that way as an adult, it's because as a child, we weren't given that language. And so I have needs. I don't trust that someone's going to meet my needs. And so I'm going to take to have that need met. And maybe as a kid, like what we said with the baseball diamond, that you had a need, the people in your life didn't know and care for you, and they didn't serve you, and they didn't build trust with you. And so now as an adult, you manipulate, or you control, or you demand that your need gets met simply because that need was never met in childhood, and this is just the way that you've learned how to relate as an adult.
It's your way of life. And what it really is it's exalting your needs. It's saying my needs are the most important, at least to me, and they should be with everybody else. They become the priority. Mm-hmm. And so it really takes trust to get there. And
it makes sense, if we are running on a deficit, that we would operate that way as an adult.
Yep.
But like Joel said, trust really is the antidote. And so if you recognize, yep, I can see this is a tendency in my life, what we want to challenge you to do is that your next time that you feel yourself being pushed towards manipulation or control or demanding that your needs get met, that you just choose to trust. And first, that is, God, I trust you to meet my need in this area, my need for attention, affection, comfort, respect, whatever. I trust that you would meet my need. I ask you to meet my need, and then that you would then appropriately communicate that to whoever you're interacting with. So maybe you tell your spouse, hey, I recognize I really need respect in this area. And whenever my need for respect is getting pushed on or not met, I recognize that I get selfish, and I demand that you will respect me as your husband, or as your wife, or as your mom. You will respect me. I recognize that I've been selfish in that, but I want you to understand this is a high need of mine. I need to feel respected. And this is what respect looks like for me. And I'm going to trust you now to meet that need for respect next time the opportunity arises.
Yeah. And so one of the keys is like that communication and trust. And I think even acknowledging to God, like putting a label, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is the lack I'm experiencing. In fact, I did that several years ago. I was going to church before I had Sunday church responsibilities. And I was feeling really discouraged. And so I just told God, I was like, I need some encouragement. And so I did, and that day, 3 random people I didn't know well, weren't in my like close circle of friends in 3 different places, just encouraged the mess out of me. And it was incredible. And I realized, hey, God really is my source, and He hears my needs, and He meets them. But another way out of that, because selfishness keeps your eyes fixed on you, is to give first. Look for how you can be a blessing to other people, how you can give to other people. And if you do that, then you'll begin to tap into the overflow of heaven that allows you really to let God in and let Him love you, and then you begin to give what you've received from Him. So don't give without a hook. Giving first is not I'm giving so that I'll get. It's giving so that I can invest in healthy relationship, and I'll trust, not manipulate.
Yeah. So the next self is self-reliance. And self-reliance says, I have no needs. And if I did, then I would get that need met myself. And so it's kind of this language of, a kid comes to you and is like, I need new shoes. And the response is, well, when I was your age, I walked to school barefoot in the snow for 3 miles, and
Uphill both ways.
uphill both ways. It's that why do you have needs, and you should just figure out how to get that need met yourself.
Tough it out.
Tough it out. Yeah. And so the antidote for self-reliance is humility.
Yep. It's letting other people in. It's saying, hey, I actually do have needs. I'm not all self-sufficient, but I'm going to let you in. I'm going to let you love me. I'm going to show you my weakness. And a word that some people love these days, and I've talked to other people that hate it, is I think a synonym with humility is vulnerability. And we don't like vulnerability because one of the definitions to vulnerability is to be open to attack. But the other side of it is that it takes vulnerability to be open to connection. That's the nature of vulnerability. It's that I'm opened up. I'm giving you my heart. It's like I'm taking my heart out of my chest, putting it in your hands, and you can either squeeze the life out of it or you can nurse it into life. And so that's the requirement of vulnerability, is that I let people in. And the starting place is actually to let you in, let yourself in, say, hey, I'm actually not doing well, and you may need to start with you and God for a bit and just say, hey, you know what, God, I'm angry. I'm really disappointed about the way this happened, or I just really feel lack right now. And then to let trusted people in. We're called to live in humility. Vulnerability is an aspect of that humility. But it doesn't mean that everybody gets to know everything, or that everybody gets to have input in my life. That's not healthy. That's not necessary. And there is a difference, by the way, between transparency and vulnerability. I want to live what one guy called a glass house life, that everybody gets to see what's going on in my life, that I would let people see me. I think that's part of being a leader, is that you set an example for people, not just with your words, but with your life. Mm-hmm. But also, there are certain people that I let into that glass house that actually, and that's vulnerability. That's the difference between the two. And they get to have an impact on me. They don't just get to see from the outside in, but they actually get in, and they are able to challenge me, to encourage me, to love me, all of those kind of things, correct me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if you're dealing with self-reliance, just begin to recognize, hey, I'm not doing okay, or like I feel a little down, or I'm having a hard time. Another thing, by the way, I almost left this out with self-reliance and vulnerability, is it's kind of that bandwidth thing that while I let people into the difficult things, that I also let people into the good things, and that they celebrate with me. One of my heroes is a guy named Jordan Peterson, and what Jordan says is that a real friend will celebrate with you and not one-up you, but they'll just enjoy your highs. And so I think that's a key, is that we would let people in to celebrate with us, and you'll know that you can let somebody celebrate with you if they'll also hurt with you and not try to fix you, and not compare your pain to their pain, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. So the third self is self-condemnation, and self-condemnation says, I do have needs, but I feel bad that I do. And so I think oftentimes, I know for me as a woman, just the messages that are sent is you're too much, you're emotional, you're whiny, you're, just the things that you're needy. And so I think from a young age, it can often be communicated to women and men, but I think a message to women is that your needs are too much. Mm-hmm. Your needs are too much to handle. And if you grew up in an atmosphere where maybe there were a lot of kids, or just your home life was unstable, or there were a lot of stress factors in your family, it could have been communicated to you that your needs are too much, and you should not have those needs. And so then, whenever we step into adulthood, we feel like we're bleeding out, and we have all these needs, and we don't know how to communicate it, and we feel bad that we have these needs. And so then in shame, we shrink back. And so I think self-condemnation really puts shame on people. And I feel like a burden, and I feel like my life is too much. And I've just got to just not be exposed and not be too much to handle, so that I'm not a burden to people. And the antidote to self-condemnation is gratitude. And whenever God really started to chip away on self-condemnation in me, it was really hard for me to understand that antidote. Like, how does gratitude actually displace this feeling of shame? But as I began to practice gratitude, it started to open up my eyes to see that I was actually really worthy of these gifts that were coming into my life. I really was worthy, because there's this sense of unworthiness connected with self-condemnation. And so I practice gratitude regularly in order to keep that self-condemnation displaced in my life.
Yeah. And I think gratitude is actually the key to receiving. If you can't give what you haven't received, well, the on button for your receiver is gratitude. And one of the things about gratitude is it's bigger than a thank you, and it's deeper than that. It's really a confession that you did something for me that had an impact on me, that really moved me, that I needed. And when you do that, while it sounds like you would be vocalizing a level of unworthiness, it's actually the key to receiving. And so it does say, hey, like what you wanted, the worth you wanted to impart to me, I actually received that worth, and gratitude is the key to doing that. And so I think gratitude is the key to killing self-condemnation. I think religion loves self-condemnation. Religion preaches self-condemnation. I was going to say I don't preach that mess. But self-condemnation is like, oh, you're just an unworthy sinner. You don't deserve anything. And it's like, yeah, if faith were a meritocracy, and I got what I earned by my works, then yeah, I probably don't deserve anything. But the key to faith is actually that I'm adopted into the family of God, and I'm a child of God, as a son of God, as a daughter of God. I get blessed. God gives to me, and my right, even my kingdom privilege, isn't about what I've earned. It's actually about my relationship, and therefore my worthiness goes up because I've been adopted into the family of God. And in fact, you and I were royalty, and because we're royalty, we have a level of worthiness that isn't based on works. It's actually based on relationship.
Yeah. So maybe today we just touched on those, as we touched on those three, that you recognize, yeah, I see this is a way that, and I think we can cycle through the three just based on different circumstance. But if you really felt like one was highlighted today, we want to challenge you to really be aware of that as you go about your week, and to be aware of those antidotes, to really practice displacing selfishness and self-reliance and self-condemnation in our lives with those things. And I think as you do, you will begin to just see health in your relationships, and your joy increase.
Yeah. Hey, we want to thank you for listening. We are now 3 episodes in. This has been a goal, a dream for us. If this has been meaningful to you, like it, share it, let your friends know, let us know. We'd love to hear from you, just how this Wholehearted with the Lowrys is impacting your life. So thanks for listening.